today, we're going to dive into a really big idea, this shift from thinking in terms of projects to thinking in terms of products. It's about moving from just getting tasks done to creating real, long-term value. Honestly, it changes the entire definition of success. So let's just jump right in with a big question for you. Think about your team, your work. Are you just checking boxes and completing tasks? Or are you actually creating something of real, lasting value? Answering that question honestly, well, it can completely change how you approach your work. It's the difference between just being busy and actually being effective. All right, so here's our game plan. We're gonna start with the classic way of looking at a project. Then we'll get into this huge idea of outputs versus outcomes. From there, we'll zoom out to see where projects fit inside a product's lifecycle, and then even further out to see the whole system for creating value. And finally, we'll tie it all together and talk about why this shift in thinking is so incredibly important right now.
Okay, so before we can really appreciate this new product-focused world, we gotta start with the basics, right? We need to understand the traditional view. What exactly is a project?
So here it is, straight from the source, the project management body of knowledge, the PMBOK guide. This is pretty much the Bible for project managers. And every single word in this definition is there for a reason. But the two I want you to really focus on are temporary and unique.
Let's unpack that a little bit. Temporary is key. It means a project has a very clear start and a very clear end. It's not supposed to go on forever, like day-to-day operations. And unique means you're creating something new, something that hasn't been done in exactly the same way before. This is that classic project box that we've all been trained to think inside of. Okay, so you finished your unique, temporary project. It's done, right? Well, not so fast. This brings us to what is maybe the most important mindset shift happening in the modern workplace, really understanding the difference between outputs and outcomes. It's all about what we make versus the result we actually want to achieve. And this slide, I think, just lays it out perfectly. The output is the what. It's the thing you can point to, the new app, the marketing campaign, the finished report. But the outcome, that's the why. It's the reason you built the app in the first place, maybe to increase sales by 10%. It's the benefit you get, the value that's creating. And look, the PMBOK guide itself totally nails this point. It's not just about producing the thing. It's about making sure that that thing actually drives an outcome that delivers value. You see the connection? The real goal isn't just to hand over the deliverable and say, we're done. The real goal is to unlock the value.
Okay, so if a project's whole point is to create an output that drives a valuable outcome, where does that project actually live? It's not just floating out there in space, right? It's part of a much, much bigger story. And that bigger story is called the product lifecycle. I mean, think about any product you love, your phone, your favorite app. It wasn't just created one day and then left alone. No way. It was launched, then it got new features, it grew, it matured, and eventually, one day, it'll be retired. That whole journey is the life cycle. And take a look at this chart from the PMBOK guide. It shows this journey perfectly. You can see the product moving through these different phases over time. But the really interesting part is what's happening under the hood. What's actually pushing the product from one phase to the next? Well, it's a whole series of individual projects. You can think of it like this. Project number 1, that's the big one, the initial launch. Project 2 might be adding a new set of features to attract more users. A few projects later, you're making revisions to keep it competitive. And then, way down the line, you might have one final project to retire it and migrate users to something new. Each project is temporary, but when you string them all together, they manage the entire life of the product. All right, you with me? We've gone from a single project to the product's entire life. Now we're gonna zoom out one last time to see the whole ecosystem. Because that product and its projects, they exist inside an even larger system within the organization. This slide might look a little complex at first, but the idea is actually pretty simple. Projects don't just happen. They're part of a much bigger system for delivering value. You can almost think of it like an investment strategy. At the very top, you have portfolios, which are aligned with the company's big goals. And within those, you have programs and projects. Those are like the individual investments you make to reach those goals. So each of these layers is basically answering a different question. The portfolio level asks, are we doing the right things to meet our strategic goals? The program level coordinates a bunch of related projects together to get benefits you couldn't get otherwise. And then
down at the project level, that's where the rubber meets the road. That's where teams are actually creating the unique deliverables.
So the big question is, how on earth do you keep all of this stuff, the portfolios, the programs, the projects, all moving in the same direction? Well, the secret sauce is a constant two-way flow of information. It's not a dictatorship where orders just come from the top.
You've got the big picture strategy coming down from leadership, setting the direction. But, and this is the crucial part, you have all this performance data, all this real-world feedback from customers and teams on the ground flowing back up. This feedback loop is everything. It's what keeps the whole system agile, responsive, and makes sure that the work being done still makes sense.
Okay, so we've talked about projects, products, life cycles in these big organizational systems. So what? Why does any of this actually matter? Why not just stick to the old way of doing things? On time, on budget, and that's it. Well, it matters because making this shift is, honestly, it's a game changer. When you see this bigger picture, your projects are no longer just a to-do list. They're directly tied to the business strategy. You become way more adaptable to what your customers actually need. You start focusing on creating value that lasts, not just hitting a deadline. And you start making decisions that are good for the whole organization, not just your little corner of it. So at the end of the day, what we're really doing here is completely changing how we define done. Success isn't just about finishing the project. Success is about delivering the intended business value. It's about seeing that outcome, that why we talked about, actually happen in the real world. It's about making a real impact. So I want to leave you with a question to chew on. Think about a project you're working on right now, or maybe one you just finished. How would your approach change if you stopped seeing it as just a temporary task and started seeing it as one critical chapter in a much longer product journey? What would you do differently?